Welcome to the Gentleman Project Podcast. This is Cory Moore.
And I'm Kirk Chugg. Today in the studio, we have one of my best friends, James Hammon. James and I got to know each other a couple years ago under circumstances where he lost his son. And we're able to, as a community, kind of come together and lift James and his family. And we, through that, have become some of the best friends, and we spend a lot of time together, and I am honored to have James in the studio with us today. And I've asked James to be here because he has a unique perspective on several different things that we haven't talked about yet in the podcast, and just super excited to have James with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
The other thing is, I told Kirk when we very first started the podcast that I wanted to sound like Sam Elliott.
And if I couldn't make you sound like that, then I was failing, right?
Yeah. And he said, well, there's only one person I know that sounds like that, and that's James. So now we finally have that voice in the studio.
So James has the perfect podcast voice. And it doesn't hurt that he kind of looks like Sam Elliott too. So this is as down to earth, honest as the day is long type friend. And I'm excited to have you here today, James. Thanks.
Thanks, brother. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, like professionally, and about your family.
Professionally, I own a restaurant. We've been in that business, catering, food business for 20 years. My personal background is a farmer, dirt, construction. It's what I've done most of my life. My wife has introduced me to a new love I never really knew I had. Feeding people, and I enjoy it. I've raised 3 kids and 8 grandkids. We lost one of our sons last July, and a lot of it from there.
Yeah. So Jared was in the Coast Guard.
Jared was in the Coast Guard. He was 31 years old when he passed leukemia. He'd been battling it for 3 years.
He was in Chicago. Stationed in Chicago. So James has turned out a Coast Guardsman, a Marine, and
a daughter in the Army.
And one of the reasons that I thought you would be such an interesting guest to have on today, James, is you're not the birth dad of those 3 kids.
No, I'm not.
But you'd never know it.
No, you wouldn't. If you didn't know me, you wouldn't know those were my kids.
So how did they come into your life, and what was the story behind you being their dad?
When I met Marty, it was kind of the instant family. I didn't really know how things would work out, but I knew that they needed a dad, and I kind of filled that role. And once I stepped into that role, I never looked back. I'm very centered on what's right today is right tomorrow, and what's wrong today is wrong tomorrow. I'm a really black and white kind of guy, and I fell in love with the whole family, not just the woman. And I think a lot of men miss that today. When I talk to guys who say, "Oh, I've got this great woman, but dang, I don't really like her kids."
Yeah, it's a package deal.
It's a package deal. You get them all or you get none. And my life has been more blessed in so many ways from raising those boys and those grandkids. I mean, I got 8 grandkids now because I stepped into that role as a father, and the things those kids have gave me, you couldn't buy with money. You couldn't even begin to comprehend what grandkids give you. You'll know one day.
Yeah, I'll know one day. But we've heard that before on the podcast. Being a grandparent's just something special you got to experience. But I've seen you with your grandkids, and they're awesome kids. But man, when they're around Grandpa, they are on cloud 9. Like, they come into the restaurant, they've always got a Huckleberry soda or a root beer in their hand.
They're the
and
best.
They just want to hang out with Grandpa. But I think the reason that is I've seen you with them, and when you're with your grandkids, nothing else happens.
Yes.
You are with those kids 100%. You are 100% present, and you build your day around them. Like, I got to go back. This guy's barbecue is off the chain. Like, I got to say the name of the restaurant. It's Lost Texan Barbecue.
Thanks.
In Pleasant View, Utah. And this guy gets up 4:00 every morning to smoke brisket, ribs, pork butt, chicken, like you name it. This is the real stuff. This isn't the stuff that they buy off the truck. And he will get up earlier than that to spend time with his grandkids if they're in town.
Yes.
So where are you going on Thursday, James?
I'm going to Texas to see those grandkids. This will be my third trip down there this year. I love my grandkids. I love spending time with them. My son and daughter both live down there now, so they're within an hour apart. It's easy for us to go down there and spend good quality time.
So I want to ask you a question, James, about these kids that you raised and now the awesome grandkids you have. There's going to be listeners who are in the early stages of that, and we all know that it doesn't always go well when you're the new dad.
It never did. It was I don't even know how to describe it. Some people say that work is a hard thing. I think being a father to children who aren't biologically your own is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but it's probably more rewarding than anything else I've done in my life. And I'll just give you a kind of a quick story about this. When my son Jared passed away, his biological father was less than an hour away and never spent more than 20 minutes with him in a month, knowing that he was getting ready to pass or that he was really sick. And when he passed, I was the dad, not the bio dad. I mean, I've been that boy's dad. And so my rewards come from seeing him graduate college. All the things you guys as biological fathers seen. And I think a step parent just needs to realize that's the most important thing. It's not about me. It wasn't about their mother. It was about the kids and my relationship with them, and it was a work in progress every day.
So it sounds like you put them first
every day
and went to their things and gave them time.
I coached softball or hardball, baseball, football, basketball. My oldest boy, Jake, and I hope he listens to this. I think he will. In the summertime, his mother would say, "You cannot leave him home with the other two kids. He will kill everybody." And Jake is my Marine. And so he was a Marine when he was little, and he's a Marine still to this day. But I would load him in, and we would go haul dirt all day. We would drive dump trucks. I put him in front end loaders and trackhoes, and at 7, 8 years old. And I think he's the man he is today because of that. And so, as a step parent, you just got to be the same as a parent. I treated those kids no different than I would have if they would have been my own blood. And I think that's hard for a lot of guys because they go, "Oh, well, you're not my kid." Well, when you tell a kid you're not my kid, then they're going to respond as not your kid.
Yeah.
And I love these kids like they were my own. They sat on my lap. We talked about victories and failures, and we had dinner around the table every night, discussed what happened during the day and what was right and what was wrong. And, we just made it a family. And I think that's the most important thing anybody could do.
So you had somebody in your life, too, that kind of stepped into that role, right?
I did.
You want to talk about John?
Yeah, and John, my stepdad, he passed away last week, unfortunately. He was a 30-year Marine. And his challenge was a little bit different than mine because he raised, when he married my mom, he got me. And when my mom married him, she got his son. And so there was two of us 2 years apart, and we were the destruction brothers. I'm here to tell you there was nothing that we couldn't destroy, break, ruin, or multitude of other things. But John stepped into that, and he accepted me as his own and raised me that way. Probably why I didn't go in the military. I thought I'd done 18 years. By the time I grew up and got out of his house, and you live with a 30-year Marine, you learn a lot of things. And I also think that had a big bearing on my patriotism, too.
For sure.
But being a stepdad, I would any advice I could give anybody is, you don't get just a woman. You get everything that comes with it. And if you don't love the whole package, you ought to find another one.
Yeah. You've told me a couple of intriguing stories that I've remembered that I'd love for you to share some of these stories about how you connected with your sons as they grew up. I know that it wasn't the easiest.
No, it wasn't.
Just their personalities were, they're all boy.
Oh, bigger than life, both of them, yes.
And you've told me a couple of those stories. Maybe you can share those with the audience about how you connected with those boys and what type of a long-term commitment that turned into.
So shooting ended up being the thing that bound our family together. I found an air rifle club when the boys were 8 or 9 years old, and we shot air rifles together. And we competed competitively at that. And then one guy says to us, he's like, we're going to take all these boys out and go trap shooting. Would you be interested in that? Sure, we love to shoot. So Jared started trap shooting, and Jake, both of them were very good at it. Jared excelled at it. At that time, he had just entered Weber High, his 10th grade, was running a solid 2.1 grade point average. And I come up to him one day and I said, Jared, you're shooting a $1,000 shotgun. You're shooting several $100s worth of shells every day. We're done until your grade point average hits 3.5 or better and stays there. He became a 3.8 honor student and graduated that because of trap shooting. I truly believe that's what motivated him. We traveled all over the United States. We went to Ohio and St. Louis and Arizona and Idaho and Nevada, and it was a great thing for him. And it gave him focus and showed him that once he fixated on something and practiced and drilled in, he could do anything. And, you know, and because he used to tell me, I'm just an average student. I said, and there's nothing average about you, bud. There's really not. You're capable of doing anything you want. And he did. He graduated, went to college in Texas, again, kind of fell off a little bit, found out about girls and beer and other things he shouldn't have. Came back home, joined the Coast Guard, and accelerated. They had never seen such a rapid advancement from where he was to where he ended. And as a matter of fact, he made Chief Petty Officer while undergoing chemotherapy 2 months before he passed away. And that was a testament to his determination to do something once he set his mind to do it. And I think that's probably the best thing I ever gave him or Jake, you know, is just go for it. There's nothing you can't do. Set your sights and do it. And just take it on, you know, and they both do. They did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love how you inspired him and told him you can do anything you want to do. How did you teach them the hard work behind that? Or was that just kind of innate with them? Like you said, hey, if you want to go shooting, you're going to have to get above a 3.5. And he's like, okay, because I love to shoot. Did you have to talk to him about what it was going to take?
Oh, we did. We gave him structure and lists and organization, and his mom paired up with counselors and teachers, and, you know, and we became more involved than we was. We was pretty involved to begin with, but we became even more involved and helped him elevate to that next level. And that was just through his sophomore year. Once he did that for a couple semesters, it was a habit. And when he went to college later in life, it became a habit, and he was an honor student through college too. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you just got to give them the tools and show them how to use them. And I think kids aren't dumb. They're going to run with whatever you can give to them to do that, you know?
Yeah. James, you also have a position of an employer. And I look at this from a bit of a unique perspective because I'm the father of one of your employees.
Yes,
we've become such good friends that I think James had his eye on my oldest to come and work in his restaurant before she was legally allowed to work in the restaurant. And she now works there and really enjoys it. But James has like these groups of kids that are from all different backgrounds and all different economic backgrounds. And they all come in and he teaches these kids hard work. Like Taylor comes home from work and she's like, I didn't sit down for the last 5 hours.
Exactly.
And because when you're at work, you're working, you're being paid to work. And she's like, oh, maybe I did. I think I had a little break, but I can't remember. Right. But she comes home and she knows she's been to work.
Oh, yes.
But these kids, a lot of kids have not had a mentor like James in their life.
I have 15 to 20-year-olds. And the 20-year-olds I have started for me when they were 15. And so we rotate, you know, I like to hire young people. I like to work with them. That was kind of what my major was before I met Marty and took on the family. It was like I was going into juvenile justice, criminal law, and that was kind of where I was headed. And then I ended up taking on some problem kids that ended up being not problems at all, just being great kids, you know, and my sons.
So how do you turn that from somebody who society might label as a problem kid. And
well, I have one of those right now too. And he's a phenomenal young man. He just needs a little direction, right? And I think it's a consistency. For me, anything you do is consistency, right?
Yeah.
If it's good today, it's good tomorrow. If it's bad today, it's bad tomorrow. And so with all those kids, that's what I try and always do. And then I try and lead by example, which I think is another thing a lot of parents don't think they need to do today. It's like, I'm the dad, I told you to do it, period. Well, you know what? My dad always showed me how to do things. And then you can roll on with the rest of it. But I think you just have to show by example, lead by example, and then just always do the right thing with them.
Yeah. And when there's an issue, we were talking about this earlier. I learned this from my mom, that if you've got a problem or an issue or feelings towards somebody, that you address it and get it out of the way and move on with your life.
Exactly.
Right?
Don't let it be a blister that festers and gets ugly.
Who wants to carry around that extra baggage all
Nobody.
the time? And so, like, there's been a couple times, even in our relationship, James, where where I've done something that you haven't agreed with, or that
Vice versa.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
And you just, this guy calls me and says, "Can you meet here at this time? We need to talk." And I love that about you.
Yes.
And I don't know that you do that with everybody, but man, as a friend, I always know where I stand with you.
I do that with all the people I care about because I think it's important. I don't want you to wonder what's James mad about today or happy about. I'm just going to tell you, if you're my friend, I share that with you.
Yeah, I love
Either way.
that. I love that about our friendship.
I do too.
Talk to us about where that came from. I'm a huge proponent of that, kind of the idea of brutal honesty with love, right? My wife is really good at that, similar to how you are. And I have what I think is one of the greatest marriages ever because of that, because she's just brutally honest and there's never anything that I don't know about. If I'm in trouble, I know exactly why I'm in trouble and immediately. But that cadence and that habit of having that brutal honesty has really made our relationship strong. So how did you become that way? And how do you tell others how to do that? How to go about it with someone still respecting you like Kirk does?
Well, I was raised by two of the strongest men I'll ever know in my world, and that is a elected lawman and a 30-year Marine. And with those kind of people in your life and an influence, I don't think you have a lot of choice. It's either, you're going to wear your feelings and stick them in your pocket, or you're going to get it aired out and deal with your grievance and be done with it and move on. And if I wanted my problems dealt with, I had to learn how to vocalize them and how to put them out there. Otherwise, I just carried it around. It became heavy baggage, and then you get angry and you get mad. You feel left out, resentment, and it's easier for me. And any kid that works for me will tell you, if you make James mad, he's going to come chew your butt. It's going to be over and done with, and the next day I'm not even going to talk about it again. It's like we just pay the price and move on, because I think dwelling in the past is not healthy for any of us.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson.
So many things to take out of that. Like, you think of the people that, you like take this mental inventory as you're sitting here listening to that. And you're like, yeah, I could actually probably be a little bit more honest with a few people in my life about things that are bothering me that I've just carried around forever. And that might be your kids. That might be your wife. That might be your business partner. And
could be anybody.
It could be anybody. But personal inventory here, and you just kind of think through it and think, yeah, that's probably the best policy, because then you don't have to carry all that around all the time.
Well, and I've noticed over time, if that's the way you are from the beginning in any relationship, it makes it way easier to be that way.
For sure.
It's a little harder if haven't been that way for 10 years and now all of a sudden you're going to be that way. You'd have to explain to people beforehand, right? I'm going to be this way now because I've decided. Yeah. But James doesn't have to do that because he's that way with
people.
Everyone.
Understand me.
Right.
And even my boys understood that at an early age. They would get in trouble at school. Jake, one day, this is a really bad story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. He's coming out of Weber High parking lot. Kid slams on the brakes. Jake bumps into the butt end of it. A little bit of damage to both cars. Jake gets out, walks up, punches the kid in the face, gets in his truck, drives home. Okay. So we got assault and battery, hit and run. Calls me on the phone. I need you home right now. I'm like, oh, this is not good, Jake. So I go home. What did you do? He gave me the rundown. I said, get in your truck, drive over to the Pleasant View police station, turn yourself in right now. And he did. Ended up being some tickets and fines and whatever. But you know what? He knew that I would force him to do the right thing. We weren't going to run. We weren't going to hide. We weren't going to capitulate to his stupidness. We were just going to go hit that bull right on the nose and deal with the problem and take care of it and get it resolved as fast as we could.
Well, I think a lot of parents guard their children from consequences.
Worst thing to do.
I think so too.
It's horrible. Let them go pay. Let them, my mom said, son, that fire's hot. Don't put your finger in it. Well, until I actually put my finger in it, I didn't know, and that's, I think, unfortunately, kids have to learn a lot of those lessons themselves. I mean, we can shelter and protect and guide and direct, but until they taste it, you just, there's some things they just got to learn themselves.
Well, I imagine that helped them do well in the military.
Oh, yes.
Because they had someone in a father and a dad in you that said, you can do anything you put your mind to, it sounds like. I'm going to help you, but you're going to have consequences in life. It isn't all, rainbows and unicorns.
That's right.
In fact, it's just the opposite. But as long as you understand that you can do anything and your actions are going to have consequences, that had to lead for people who could excel in the military.
Exactly. And all my kids have done really well. My boys both were phenomenal. My son today is a great dad. He's taken on 2 step kids and plus his own 2. And I'm just proud of them. They've all turned out really well.
James, if you had to teach your kids one lesson, what would it be and how would you teach it to them?
Integrity and honesty. I think those 2 things run together. And I think as long as you have integrity and you're always honest, you can do anything you want in life.
How would you teach that? I mean, that's a huge concept, right?
Oh.
And that's a consistency thing.
That's a day in, day out thing you work on every day.
So how did you teach that? Can you think of a story that you taught your kids? Honesty,
hard work,
integrity?
Hard work would probably be where Jake started. One day he came to me, he was 10 years old, wanted a $180 pair of Michael Jordan shoes. I'm a $12 an hour construction guy. I didn't go buy them. I said, you want those shoes? Let's get you a paper route. The next day he had a paper route. A month later, he had those shoes. He never bought another pair of those shoes the rest of his life. No kidding. Because he learned, that there's the shoes I get from Payless last just as long and they cost $20. And so I taught him that lesson of hard work and money. And, the integrity part of that comes through working every day, doing the job, even when you don't want to. Right in the middle of that was when Standard Examiner went from nights to days, mornings. So he delivered after school. So all of a sudden now we got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and deliver before school. And that was a huge commitment. And it took a lot of integrity, I think, and hard work and motivation to have 2 boys doing that every day.
No, that's cool.
You got to bring back the paper routes.
I know it's come up 2 weeks in a row. Paper routes. And what's the modern day 20th century version of the paper route?
Have to
come up with something like that.
There's still paper routes out there. Just the only people that are delivering to are 70 or older, though. That's a problem.
So, James, if you went back in time and you were just starting again with Marty and these kids, and you could give yourself advice, right? You could kind of say, hey, do these things a little bit different. Because that's really why we do this podcast, right? Learn from each other so that we don't have to make the same mistakes, or we could do things a little different as fathers and grandfathers. What would you say to yourself? What kind of advice would you give your younger self?
I would say spend more time on the little things that you don't think matter, because at the end of the day, they really do. Reading a book with your kid at night, throwing a baseball when you're too tired to throw a baseball after you've been at work all day. There was a lot of times I probably pushed them away because I was tired, didn't want to do things, but I still tried to do, but I would just tell any parent, when you think you've run out of gas, just dig a little deeper. You got a little more and give it to them, because they deserve it. They've as your kids, they've earned that,
Yeah.
Just you got to dig down inside though to find that energy. Sometimes it's hard when you come home from a 12-hour day to want to go do stuff with your kids and they're screaming and yelling and you've been listening to that all day already, and take the time to do it. You won't regret it.
Because it goes by.
Oh, so fast.
Yeah.
So fast. When we buried my son last year, it's like I could think back to the time when he was just a little guy and it was yesterday, and then other times it was lifetimes ago. And so when you have a big loss and you look back, you don't want to regret. You don't want to have any regrets. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned since my son died. Don't have regrets. And so, when Kirk Chugg calls me and says, hey, we're honoring a veteran. You want to be there? Of course I do. I don't want to regret not being there. And, or anything of that nature. I just say, you got to be in the moment. You need to be with them and be involved in what they're doing. It's so important.
So that's a great lesson. And it was actually probably a partial answer to the question that I wanted to ask. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's gone through the loss of a child, and whether they're small or whether they were adults? How have you dealt with it, and what have you learned from it for those out there that might be in that same situation?
Well, that's a tough question, Kirk. What I've learned is you don't get over the pain. It doesn't go away. It maybe lessens in degrees a little bit. If you're religious, I would say lean on your God. If you're more friend-oriented, lean on your friends, your family. Surround yourself with people who know you, love you, and understand you, I think. And don't forget the memories. The memories are all we have left at the end of the day. And when it's all said and done, that's all you leave, and hang on to those memories and share them. I don't even know how to describe the physical pain I felt. And a lot of people, not a lot, because not many dare say it to me, but I've had a few people say to me, well, Jared wasn't your biological son. Well, no, he wasn't, but he was my son. I couldn't have loved another kid any more than I love Jared. Don't compartmentalize it. Share it. Talk about them. Talk about their memories. And lean on the people that love you. That's truly what helped me. And I still struggle to this day. I mean, I might hear a song come on the radio. I might see Ben Lomond a certain way. And I'll just start bawling like a baby. And no explanation. It doesn't get easier. It just gets different.
What would you, maybe you may not want to answer this if it's too emotional, but if Jared was sitting here right now, what would you say to him?
Oh, I'd hug him. I'd just grab him and love him. That would be the first thing. And I would tell him how proud I am of him. He was such a good guy and accomplished everything he ever set his sights on, and I like to think that maybe I gave him those skills to do that in life, him and Jake both. And if you believe it, you can be it. I truly believe that.
I love that you say that. I try to talk to my kids about that often. And when you were talking about the little things and the time when you're at work and you're just too tired, I felt like you were talking to me, because I've been that guy.
Me too, buddy.
Where I get home and I'm like, I just don't really want to do that. But so I need to, you're giving me a lesson for sure. I need to hold on to every moment, because I think about what if, whether they were 14, 30 or 50.
Exactly.
If I lost one of my kids, I would definitely look back and say, oh man, I should have thrown that ball that one night, or I should have gone and taken him for ice cream, or I should have had that heart on heart about what was going on at school, or you name it.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to live with those kind of regrets, because I think a lot of people drowned in those regrets when they're going through that kind of pain and grief. I think a lot of maybe substance abuse even comes from that. I've known a lot of people who, myself included, have dealt with that problem. And I think if you can learn to share with other people to help carry your burdens. And you know, everybody, maybe not everybody is as fortunate as me to have the kind of friends and family I do. But I think we all have somebody we can turn to, hopefully, you know, even if it's a clergy or pastor or bishop or whatever, you know, put it out there and let people help you carry the burden, because they will. You know, this guy right here, Kirk, oh my gosh, I can't count the number of times I called him when I was just literally falling apart. And I mean, like I've never fell apart in my life. And I buried my mom, 2 dads, a brother, sister, and a son. And the son part was the one. And Kirk was right there. You know, he picked me up, he brushed me off, gave me the guidance and love I needed. And I'm still upright today because of it.
If there's a day that goes by that I don't talk to James or we don't text each other or something, one of us is probably dead.
Something's wrong.
And it's great to have a friend like that in my life.
It's great for me too. That's for sure.
So
when you're when you have people pass and you're thinking about life, when that happens a lot, right? You're thinking about, I feel like I get clarity in those moments about what life's all about. And you know, you start realizing that a bunch of stuff isn't very important.
There's a whole lot of things that don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So, what if it was your turn someday down the road? What would you want your kids to say about you? What would you want your grandkids to say about you and at that moment in time?
I would hope that they knew I was a man of integrity and that I was a hardworking provider and that I love them beyond any measure known. And that's probably all that really matters to me. You know, I mean, I've taken them shooting and fishing and camping or whatever. That's all good. But I think if you just boil it down to the core, that's how you want to be remembered, right? It's a hardworking guy that provided for his family and loved them all more than anybody else could.
Yeah.
I think you maybe just provided the answer to the question, James, what do you think a gentleman is? Would it be that?
I think it would be that.
Yeah, I think that's a great definition.
That's a perfect definition. Actually, I like that a lot. I wasn't thinking in those contexts, but I really like that. You know, I was watching a video, I think it was yesterday, about leadership and things. And it was this video about, hey, when you pass, or anyone does, nobody talks about really what you did or what you had. They talk about the friendships, the love, the memories, all the things you just talked about.
That's right.
Yeah, what you are.
And I think as dads, as fathers, it's good to remember that, because your kids aren't going to remember. Most of my kids couldn't tell you a Christmas present, for example, that they've gotten from us, except for the puppy last year, because it was an emotional thing and that turned into family time. But they can tell you 1,000 stories about time we spent together, and they can tell you about hard times that we went through together. They can't tell you about a darn thing that we gave them for Christmas. I was just having that aha moment the other day.
Yeah, and that's okay too, but you want them to remember you the way you've raised them and the things you've taught them. And I think as a dad, that's what we all want. You know, we want them to look at our headstone when they go look at it someday and say, you know, that was the best dad I could ever hope to have. He taught me hard work. He taught me family. He taught me integrity, you know, and I think if you do those few things, you've accomplished something in life, you know. I don't think it's about money or anything else. I just think it's, for me personally, it's about the satisfaction of seeing how well my family's turned out, you know, and that they're all very capable, functioning, great products. And, you know, they do what they're supposed to do, and they're just good people, you know.
Well, I think what we hope is that our kids become somewhat a measure of what we are.
And even better than we are.
And better than we are, if possible. I see a lot of my own qualities and some of my own failings or shortcomings manifest themselves in my own kids. And that's both heartening and disheartening at the same time.
Yes, it is.
Because you can see some of the things that they have absorbed and paid attention to are some of the things you wish you could eliminate from your own character.
Yes.
We've talked about patience and, losing your temper. And I see sometimes how quick my kids are to anger. And I think, well, where did they get that from? Like,
their mother. And you always blame the mother.
Definitely not their mother. It's definitely not their mother in this case. So, you see those things and they're kind of a reflection of what we've helped them to do. And they are their own people.
They are, for sure.
And they have their own personalities and they can make their own choices to take, some of those traits and accept them, adopt them, or they can use that example to weed that out of their personality. And we've talked about that just last week on the podcast. And so I don't know, James, you've given me a lot to think about today. A lot of those little things. My daughter the other night came over and she loves to go play in the snow and sled, and I don't have any snow clothes that I go out and play in. And, it's cold and windy and wet. And, God, I don't know how many times she's asked me to go play in the snow the last couple of days.
I'll bet you go next time.
I bet I do. I've talked her into reading a book instead, but, I don't want her to remember that I didn't go play.
Someday I'll show you the pictures of me and Marty sledding with all the grandkids. You want to see something funny? Yeah. Me and Grandma sledding with the grandkids.
Well, and one more thing that I think your kids have probably adopted, because it's a trait that I see in you, is you are the most generous person I know.
Well, thank you. I know a lot of people, and that's pretty high bars, so thank you.
James owns a restaurant and he refuses to reheat food. He thinks if you're paying the price for his food that you ought to get good, fresh day of food. And if he has any food left, he finds a family that needs it and he gives away good barbecue. This is the good stuff. And if there's anything left, he'll take it to the fire station. He'll take it to the police station. He'll find a needy family that needs it, and he'll go out of his way to find that family. And when he's been unsuccessful in those regards, sometimes he'll call me and say, hey, do you want some stuff? You want some leftovers? And I swear, I've eaten more barbecue since I've known James and been so well fed from the generosity. You just kind of exude it. I've had the privilege. We usually have lunch at the restaurant. I don't know, maybe once a week, every other week. And you can sit there at a table and watch, and James knows everybody that walks through that door. He is a relationship guy.
That's what it's about for me.
And we talked about advertising and stuff recently, and how he doesn't really think he could be any busier than he already is. And I saved this because what I wanted to tell you was you do advertising every time somebody walks through that door and you say their name, you know where they work, you know what's going on in their life, and you check on them.
And I know their kids.
Yep, you know their kids. And I think that that's why you do so well. We've talked about relationships and the meaning of those relationships. If we're going to take this a business direction, James has got that relationship thing down, and he spends time and effort in remembering his customers, and it never ceases to amaze me. If you come in and he doesn't know your name, he'll know it by the time you leave his restaurant.
So that idea of showing gratitude and love to others, and ultimately acts of service, right? Giving your food, taking it to the police station or wherever. Has that affected your kids? Do they have those same kind of traits now?
They do. My son, Jake, maybe not so much, but my daughter, Jessica, is amazing. She lives in Galveston, and she does tons of programs for food for the poor and food boxes and food drives. And we've kind of always been that way a little bit. I've never really talked about it. I don't make a big deal out of it. I'm a little bit embarrassed Kirk even said anything.
Sorry.
It's just,
sorry. And that's the way you are. You don't do it for accolades. And
No,
you don't
I
do
just-
it for public attention.
I do it because it feels good right here, you know, and I do it to make the people I help feel good right there.
Well, I'm always talking to my kids about what true happiness is, right? Like, how do you find real happiness? Because there's a lot of fake happiness out there.
Tons.
There's a lot of temporary happiness, right? Go to a party and have temporary happiness. But certainly I think service, thinking outside yourself, thinking about somebody else, that's definitely one of the number one ways to feel true happiness, right?
Yep. The other one I could show you is when I went to pick my granddaughter up at the airport, and there's a little 5-year-old girl with curlies going everywhere, arms out, grandpa running full steam ahead. That you can give me $1 million and make me happier than what that did, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. It's in interpersonal relationships.
Exactly.
That truly is where happiness comes
I agree.
from.
Whether it's with your family, your business, your kids, my customers, Kirk, you, whoever, you know. I think it's nice to have somebody that knows you on a level that other people really don't, and kind of understands what you're thinking. And, you know, like Kirk, 5 years ago, I don't know that we would have been best friends, you know, because I was in a different point in my life, but I've opened up my heart to him, and he's opened up his heart and his family to me. And it's amazing what comes out of that when you just are willing to give a little bit and accept a little bit back. A lot of people are willing to give, but they're not willing to accept it back because they put up walls. And I have one of those in my life right now that I struggle with every day. But I've found since Jared died that if I just open up my heart and let him in, you can't even begin to comprehend the love and the blessings you get out of that.
That's a good lesson learned. Now you've raised these great kids. Now you have these great grandkids that bring you a lot of joy. And you've mentioned Marty a few times, you know, that you got the whole package. I want to ask you a little bit about how you co-parented, because I feel like that's an important part of being a great father in raising great kids is how you do that together. And you guys, not that it wasn't hard, not that you didn't have struggle, but ultimately you turned pretty darn successful parents. How did you guys do that together? What was the interaction like?
Probably the number one thing we agreed on was that she would never challenge me in front of the boys, and I would never challenge her in front of the boys. And if she didn't like the way I was disciplining or something I was saying, she would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Come to the bedroom." And we'd go talk about it. And you know, she made me learn to not discipline in anger. You know, like that was a hard one for me because I'm kind of a hothead, you know, and so she'd go, "All right, Jake, you go to your room for 30 minutes. James, you go to your room for 10. When you're both calmed down, then we'll figure out the best punishment for this situation." And I think her supporting me is the biggest thing ever. I was never unfair or harsh or, you know, she believed in me. And I think that was the key to it right there. And then, like I said, not challenging each other, you know, like Jake could go, "Well, Mom said I could do that. How come you say I can't?" "Well, your mom never said that because we're on the same page. Don't roll that to me because I know better." And so having consistency again, consistency every day, that's the biggest key to being a parent.
That's good advice. I think a united front
Yes.
Is really important.
Because kids are smart. Now, if they see me and her bickering over how to best discipline them, kids aren't dumb. They're going to play and they're going to drive wedges. And I think that's in step families. That's so crucial that the mom support the stepdad and the dad support the stepmom or whatever. You have to be unified and you have to stand together or they will chew you up and spit you out. I've seen it many times.
You said that. You look like Sam Elliott on Tombstone when you said that just now. I love it. They will chew you up and spit you out.
I'll be your huckleberry. Right?
You've always been my huckleberry, James. Well, thank you so much, James. Your advice has been very valuable to me today. I hope that the listeners have also gotten something from these words of wisdom. You can see why I'm friends with this guy, about as a good a friend and as down to earth and honest a guy as you could possibly wish to have in your group of friends. I love you, James.
Thanks, brother. Love you too. Thanks, Cory.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
you guys
for being
having me.
with us.
We hope you join us next week as we have another guest. We release these podcasts on Monday morning so that you can have a full week to enjoy them. If you have any info, feedback that you'd like to pass on to us, please email us at info@thegentlemanproject.com or find us on any social media platform, and you can send us a message. We love hearing from our listeners. We appreciate you spending the time with us today. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore.
Thanks for joining us on the Gentleman Project Podcast.